Here we
It's all
go.
yours.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I am very excited about this class. Today we are going to be doing some art journaling techniques. We're going to be using a jelly plate and we're going to be making some affirmation cards. So today, the day that we're filming this live, is Valentine's Day, and I know we can get very busy in the chaoticness of a holiday like that. But what I want us to do is take some time and really kind of focus on ourselves and really just take some time loving on yourself and showing yourself that you are important and that you are someone who is definitely loved and definitely cared for. So we're going to be making some very cool affirmation cards with a technique that you may or may not have ever used before. So I am going to be using a jelly plate today, but if you don't have a jelly plate, I'm going to show you some other ways to play along. So I encourage those of you who are watching with me live to make with me, even if you're just using crayons or markers or something like that. I'd love for you to kind of play along. I'd also love for you to talk to me in the chat and let me know. So if there are some messages that you think that you would like to see in some of the work that I'm doing today, I'd love to incorporate some of your affirmations and some of my affirmations into the class today. So if you didn't get a chance to before, I did a class earlier in January on vision boarding. And so we did a lot of kind of vision board reflection. So you might want to even pull out the sheets that we use during the vision boarding session to kind of get your brain going about some of the things that you're hoping for, some of the things that you want to be true about yourself, some of the things that you know you need those messages to hear, and you really need to believe those messages. So keep all of that in mind when we're going through our class today. And let's go ahead and switch over to the other screen. And you can see this is the jelly plate. I have a 5x7 jelly plate. They also come in a smaller one and a larger one, but I think this is a great place for you to start if you've never used one before. I also have some cardstock. This is just regular white cardstock. It's about 65 pounds. So it's kind of like a medium weight cardstock, not too terribly thick, not too terribly thin. And I've cut all my cardstock into, I've cut it in half, the 8.5 by 11 into half, so that it can fit nicely on this jelly plate size that I have. Another important element you're going to be using is a brayer. So this is a Recollections brayer. There's brayers in lots of different sections at Michael's. This one I think is found by where all the card making stuff is and close to the alcohol inks and things like that. There are also brayers in the section because people use brayers for Cricut crafting and using your tech machines and things like that. So you can find them there too. And you can find them a couple other places, but this is the Recollections one. There are a couple other brands that you can pick up as well. And then the paint I'm going to be using on my jelly plate today is going to be this soft body Liquitex paint. You can use a lot of different paints. You can use craft paint. You can use any of the Artist Loft acrylic paints. I just happen to be having these little cute bottles of Liquitex soft body acrylic. And that's what I'm going to be using. And then when I start kind of adding some extra touches and adding some of my different words and things like that, I'm going to be using some Posca markers. I love Posca paint pens. They're just my favorite. So maybe a Sharpie, maybe a paint pen if you have it. And if you don't, you can always kind of improvise and just use some more of the paint. If you happen to have the paint, you can paint these words on. You don't have to use markers or paint pens to go over top of it. But in order to get some of these fun, interesting textures, that's what we're going to use our jelly plate for. And jelly plate printing is all about being very creative, being willing to get a little bit messy, and definitely having lots of fun. So here's what the jelly plate looks like. And it is what it says it is. It's a gelatin kind of mold. It's very flexible. It's very wiggly. And I'm going to put this directly onto the scrap paper or the background paper that I'm working on today. And I'm just going to keep it there and I'm going to keep working with it. One of the things that I do when I'm doing jelly prints like this is I'm making what I call fodder paper. So I'm just going to keep going and keep using the plate and making lots of things at the same time. I'm not going to take one piece of paper and go all the way through the whole entire process. I'm going to be kind of mixing and matching my colors and using a lot of different pieces of paper at the same time so that there's not a lot of waste and there's a lot of creative reuse in order to create lots of different textures. And then once I have a pile of these papers that look like fun background papers, then I'll stop and take some time and go back with my markers and actually write the affirmations on them. So we're going to be kind of digging in and doing a lot of messy work. So I have my paper back here. That's a scrap paper that's protecting my work surface. I have a lot of scrap pieces of paper off to the side to roll off some extra paint. But really, I'm going to try and reuse as much of the paint and as much of the things as I possibly can to kind of keep me going. So here's where we will begin. I'm going to show you a little bit with the Gelli plate. So I have my stack of cardstock that I can print on. I have my brayer. I have my Gelli plate. And I'm going to start just by putting very few, it doesn't take a lot, very few dabs of the soft body acrylic paint onto my surface. And I was using the red just then, and I'm going to use some yellow. And I'm going to kind of stay within this color palette of red, yellow. I really like this light blue, maybe a pink, a silver, and even a dark blue. So that's kind of the color palette that I'm going to be going with, but please feel free to have your own fun. I'm just putting a couple of little dots, not a ton. It doesn't take a lot of paint. And then here's where the brayer comes into play. Now that I have these dots on my Gelli plate, I take my brayer and I start rolling out these dots. Now you can tell that it's already making a really fun marbled texture, marbled pattern, and you might like it just like that. So just to kind of get us started, I'm going to take my piece of cardstock and I'm going to place it face down on this Gelli plate. And I'm not going to be too careful and worry too much about the edges because usually when I'm done with a piece, I go back with my paper cutter and I trim off any of the excess white and make it a solid, the same shape every single time, the same dimensions for each of my cards. So I don't need it to be perfectly centered or anything like that. You can watch me kind of rubbing my hands against the Gelli plate to kind of get the transfer going. And then this is the magic, and this is the fun that I love about Gelli printing, is then you get to magically pull this up and reveal your first print. So this is one layer, and I like to do lots of different layers. So if you don't love what you just did, that just means you're not done yet. So we can add some more layers until we get something that you actually like. So the next time that you do a little bit of paint onto your surface, it's okay if there's excess because that can just go on to the next print. You could try some lines. You could try some different placement. And again, you don't need a ton of paint, so don't go crazy. This time I'm going to do a couple of these lines of blue, and I'm going to follow the lines with the brayer to kind of keep those blues and have almost like a stripe of blue. And then on this next print, I am going to show you another technique where I'm going to pull off either a paper towel or a napkin or something, and all kinds of different brands of paper towels have different patterns on them. So if you watch me do this and kind of press this paper towel into it, I'm going to pick up some of the color, and what's left behind is going to be some really interesting texture with those dots you can probably see. Yes, using a painting knife to bring out the colors is a great idea. I'm going to go ahead and get these dots onto this piece of cardstock. If you wanted to add this blue to the cardstock you already have going, you can absolutely keep doing that too. Sometimes I use the brayer to roll over top of my Gelli plate when I'm kind of pressing it down, and sometimes I just use my hands. But this is a very different look already because that paper towel left those really cool marks. So I'm going to kind of keep coming back to these and adding different layers. I'm going to add some more yellow. Roll that out. And if you're starting to get like some of the blues from other things, that's why I keep lots of scrap paper handy too, because you can roll out your brayer so that you don't mix your colors as much. And also don't be afraid of starting a new card with some of this excess paint. So I have this excess paint on my brayer. Instead of just putting it onto a scrap paper, I can lay down another layer and kind of build on that in just a little bit. And once you've rolled your brayer a couple times, then that paint is pretty much off of the brayer, and you're going to get a cleaner color contrast when you add a different color to your plate. So I see some of you working along with me, and I'm really excited about that. So feel free at any point, if you have any creations that you want to kind of show us and do a little show and tell, feel free to do that. You can put your pictures in the chat, or you can also tag us at Learn with Michaels, and we would love to see what you're creating. So this one has a little bit more solid yellow. I'm going to add that to this blue piece that I have already. I'm just going to lay it on top. And again, remember I told you you could use your brayer if you want to. And it doesn't matter that this is on the back. That's not going to matter at all. And by layering that, now I have something even more interesting happening with the dark blue that I already have and some pops of yellow. And maybe you want to go one more step further with the same one and add some pops of red. So I'm going to have a little bit of red. And I haven't really used my silver yet. So I'm going to use a little bit of my silver too. And if I roll it in different directions, you're going to get different patterns. So feel free to go a little crazy with your rolling. I'm going to do some of the paper towel technique and pick up a little bit of that. And so I have some of those dots on my jelly plate. So when I go ahead and lay this down one more time on it, let's see what this looks like. Ooh, I really like that. Little bits of silver here and there. I'm going to put this one to the side because this is one I'm definitely going to add something to. I'm going to keep going and keep making some different plates. I'd love to see what you are working on. But also in the chat, let me know when we get to our affirmation part, which we'll be getting to pretty quickly. Let's think about some of the affirmations that we might need to hear for ourselves. Is there a message that you're not quite sure you believe yet, but that you want to believe? That's a great one to add because the more you say it, the more it can be absorbed into yourself to know that it's true. Another fun thing about jelly plates is that you can let different layers dry in between and then add more colors, and it's going to be picked up in a very different one. Ooh, we have our first affirmation in the chat that says she believed she could, so she did. I love that. I'm gonna go ahead and print this. And I am going to roll my brayer over top of this. Sometimes at the end of my printing sessions, I find that I might like the side of the brayer even better than the side that I was actually trying to print on. So I like having options. I love the way this one's looking. I like the light blue with kind of like a cloud. This is still on here, so if I want to, I can add it to one of my other pieces. So I pulled that red up and added it onto this card. And this is a technique that you'll get used to. So it's not something that you can kind of watch what I'm doing and copy exactly, because I think we're all going to end up with pretty different prints. This next one, I'm going to do too much paint on purpose and kind of show you what happens with too much paint. I've been pretty conservative so far with how much paint I've been using. So this is a significantly larger amount of paint than I had used on the other processes. And I think what's just going to end up happening is that you're kind of moving the paint around and there's a lot of excess paint. So I don't want to waste that paint. I'm going to take the paint that's on the brayer and I'm going to roll that out onto a different card. And even that is something that I can definitely build on later. And then this is pretty saturated. So when I go to put my next piece of cardstock down, it's definitely going to slip and slide a little bit because there is so much paint on the Gelli plate. And don't expect that all of it is going to get absorbed. There might still be some left when I pull this up. So here we go. Ooh, lovely. And you can tell that there's lots more left over. So don't be afraid to use that lots more. I'm going to go back to one of my other cards and go ahead and add that over top as another layer. Awesome. That really, I love the pink that it got added. I'm going to kind of try and get one of these white spots covered. And maybe this white spot too, just by using some of the extra paint that happens to still be on my plate. Awesome. I'm going to do some yellow and some blue. I'm going to take this scrap paper. I'm going to use the other side of it. Press that print. Ooh, we have another affirmation in the chat that says, honor what comes. I like that. I really like this one, especially for writing an affirmation on it, because it feels like there's not too much going on this print, that it doesn't feel so overwhelming that if I want to write a longer affirmation, this would be a good paper for that. In fact, I think I'm going to go back and I'm going to add a little bit of red dot over top of it with our paper towel technique. So I'm just going to roll out some of my red and I'm going to pull up some of it with my paper towel and leave some of these dots. This time with my paper towel, look at how much more of the paper towel design it left on it. I like that. And I'm going to put that on top of this blue and yellow. Ooh, love that. Really nice, interesting texture. Add it to that. And there's still some on here. So if I want to add that little bit of red to something else, maybe this. I'll have two sides of this one to pick from. Not sure which one I'm going to end up with. But all of this is giving us some really great creative backgrounds to get started with our affirmation cards. I think I'm going to do maybe two more, and then I'm going to move on to the affirmations. Let me know if you have any questions about what I'm doing or why I'm doing it in the chat, and I would love to try and help you. Nice. That's a good Valentine's one. So maybe I'll add some pink to this one. And I'll show you another technique I like to use sometimes, which is to take a piece of paper that I have laying around and kind of crumble up that piece of paper. So our journaling ends up becoming like a scavenger, looking for anything and everything to make different designs with. So this scrap piece of paper crumpled up and giving me all these different fold lines. If I put that down on my plate, it's just going to remain some interesting texture. It's going to pull up some of the texture. Feel free to put that onto another card somewhere if you want to. Might as well use all your resources. And then let's see what this print looks like when I put it on top of the red. Ooh, fun. Leaving me some good blank space to put an affirmation. I like that. It's very rustic, very kind of beaten up, but still ready to go. And I'm going to go ahead and put my jelly plate to the side. Now, when I use my jelly plate, when I'm storing it in between sessions, it's recommended that you store it in between two pieces of paper. And it's okay if there's still a bit on here and there. You can always add some more paint and pull that up. So I'm not going to worry a lot about getting it super duper clean right now because I'm definitely going to use it again. I'm going to put it in between these two pieces of paper and put it off to the side. And then I'm going to start going through some of the papers that we've already made and seeing what beautiful affirmations we can add to them. So feel free to keep writing some of your ideas for affirmations in the chat, and we'll see which ones we can add to some of these beautiful pieces. What's nice about working on lots of different surfaces at the same time too is that it really allows for some of the beginning ones to dry and give us some time so that we can go back and work on them again. So some of these already feel pretty dry and pretty ready to go. So I'm going to start with this one. And I like the affirmation that was in the chat about she believed she could, so she did. Let me make sure that I got that one right. Is that what it said? She believed she could, so she did. Yeah. And then at this point, you can use Sharpies, you can use paint pens, you can use Poscas, you can use whatever it is that you want. I like to kind of mix and match different fonts and different handwriting styles too, so you'll kind of notice me doing that. And what I'm going to start with is a Sharpie. She believed she could, so she did. So I'm kind of planning out how I'm going to write it. And I'm going to take advantage of kind of this diagonal pattern. And I'm going to kind of write on that same diagonal. She believed she could, so she did. So this is a she. And I'm going to emphasize the word could by changing to an all caps. She believed she could, so she did. And that's kind of my first rough draft round of writing those letters. I'm going to go back and I'm going to thicken my letters by just kind of going back through each of my letters. And when I'm kind of doing my lettering, I like to kind of block out from that original letter and then go ahead and scribble that in and fill it in to make it more thick with my lettering style. And at this point, if you don't love your own handwriting, write an affirmation about, I love my handwriting. And then go ahead and if you don't want to use these, you can find some letter stickers. You can find some stickers that already have phrases on them. So if you don't want to use your own handwriting, although it is an affirmation and you probably should, you can go ahead and use other techniques as well. I'm just thickening these letters. And then another technique I like to do once I kind of lay down the color with my black Sharpie. And instead of black Sharpie, you are welcome to use a paint pen right away. But I a lot of times like to go back with a white paint marker and kind of outline these words that I already have laid down with my Sharpie, just for them to kind of pop off of the color plate even better. She believed she could, so she did. And what's nice is right now, some of those most recent prints that we did are having some time to dry while we're focusing on this one, so that we can come back and keep working on those when we're done. I'm going to show you how I take my white Posca marker. I'm priming it, making sure that it's ready to go. And then I'm going to go back with an outline. And I sometimes go back and forth several times where I'll do my white outline and then I'll go over it again in black, and maybe I'll go over it again one more time in the white. And I just like to keep going back and forth until I kind of like the lettering, especially with the white Posca. Maybe one layer of white is not going to be quite enough. It might sink too deeply into the background. So you might need 2 layers or so of the paint just to make it stick out a little bit better. And I love a little imperfection when it comes to the outlining the letters in white, because again, I can go back and do the black again if I get a little out of control with my white, but really, I like the natural kind of carefree look of it, of just doing what I can with my outline and not trying to spend too much time on perfection. Another fun thing to do is once I'm kind of done with my lettering, you might want to take some of your paints or some of your paint markers and kind of add a few flourishes here and there too. And I'll show you what I mean in just a moment. And I like writing these. And as I'm writing this information, I'm kind of saying it to myself over and over and over again as I'm working on it. And when you turn these affirmations into mantras, then that's a real powerful way to kind of change some of those negative self-talk tapes that might be in your brain and convince yourself that these things are in fact true. You can do whatever it is you set your mind to. I'm going to use a little bit of my pink paint because there's some pink paint in this background. And on a scrap piece of paper, I'm just going to put a little bit of pink paint. And then I might even take the tip of a paintbrush and dab into that. And then maybe just make a couple of dots. So this is where you can really play with some of your mixed media and kind of add in a different kind of paint. You could add in some stitches with some embroidery. You can do a lot of different things to kind of play along with all the colors that are already in there and kind of add some more of your own flair to it. And I think I like this one as is. Awesome. So this is a great one. And then when I'm done too, I can go back through and I can cut this down to a proper size so that I don't have all that extra white. And then if you want to also, you can put it onto a larger piece of colored paper and then go ahead and frame that. Put that somewhere that you can see it every day to remind yourself to continually say it to yourself until you are able to believe it. So here's my first one. I'm going to put it to the side. And I am very interested in hearing some more of your mantras or some more of your affirmations. I'm going to do one of, I'm going to kind of prep one. This is a darker piece that I ended up with. So I'm going to show you how you can kind of work with your darker piece as well to turn it into something that might be easier to see. So similar to what we did before with our pink, I'm going to try and use silver, I believe. And this is all just kind of playing around. I don't know if this is going to work or not. This is all kind of experimental right with you. I'm going to take a paintbrush and I'm going to put it into the silver. And I'm going to do some swipes of silver to kind of give me some space to write on. That's a little bit calmer and a little bit less busy, less hectic than the rest of the background. And this is kind of a good, you know, meta moment too of trying to find the calm So if there's a lot of busyness going on, maybe this affirmation is going to have something to do with you focusing on what's important, or kind of taking some time for yourself and kind of finding space. I actually think that just hit a nerve for me, that might be what I'm going to write. You can take up space. I know it sounds silly, but sometimes we need to be reminded that it is okay for us to take up space. We should take up space. And because I'm adding this paint, these fresh layers of paint, I am going to put this off to the side and let it dry and kind of go on to another one and come back to this. So I'm going to leave this be for a little bit, and I'm going to come back to this when this is nice and dry so that I can write over top of it without doing too much smearing. That to the side, let it dry, and let's find another one. I know someone else wrote their own affirmation. Ooh, breathe in, trust, exhale, doubt. Love that one. Maybe let's work on that one in this. Breathe in, trust. I want to make sure I get it. Breathe in, trust, exhale, doubt. Let me write that down so I don't forget. Breathe in, trust, exhale, doubt. Beautiful. Okay, I'll think about how I want to put my lettering. Breathe in, trust, exhale, doubt. So I'm going to make my breathe and I'm going to make my exhale larger. I'm going to start this time, I think, with my white paint pen. Breathe.
We have a quick question from Sandy.
Okay.
She's wondering, if we have a plate larger than the size of a 5x7 card, what is the best workaround for making a smaller print with a larger plate? And
Awesome question.
what kind of household item can be used as a plate if they don't have one?
Ooh, interesting. I like all of these questions. So when it comes to having a larger plate on smaller and wanting to create smaller cards, it's all about how large you cut your cardstock. So you can have a very large plate and you can put several different pieces of cardstock on that same plate and pull up different things. So don't worry about trying to make something a different size, because that's going to be pretty easy for you to make several at the same time, or to just cover parts of the plate at a time in order to get some of that color onto your cardstock. So that should answer that. And then if it comes to not having a jelly plate yet and wanting to kind of play along, you can, and let me show you how this can work. I just have a normal piece of cardstock right here. And if I just put a couple dabs of paint onto just a regular piece of cardstock and use my brayer and kind of run over those. Without a jelly plate, I can still do some printing. You can imagine that the jelly plate really keeps the colors a little bit richer or more vibrant, but you can kind of just make your own backgrounds by kind of scribbling some paint down, or by combining a couple of different colors and kind of just painting very abstractly without thinking too hard about it. So there are other ways to do it without your jelly plate. And also, if you don't have a jelly plate, maybe you have watercolors. So go ahead and pull out some watercolor paper instead of cardstock, do a wash on the back of your paper, let all the watercolor dry, and then come back and do the same kind of affirmations activity with watercolor instead of with our jelly plate. So feel free to use whatever materials you already have access to, and all of those are going to work. So I have my breathe. This is what I have so far. Obviously, you can't see it yet, but that's okay. I'm just doing one layer so far. So breathe in, trust. And I'm going to put trust in cursive. So I have breathe in, trust. And then I'm going to put my exhale larger, like my breathe. And then I'm going to put my doubt in cursive. So I have breathe in trust, exhale doubt. I'm going to start building those letters out by adding to the thickness of them. So that you can see them a little better. And because I have some nice red background on this particular card, I could outline my letters in red. I tend to use white and black as my outline colors the most, but you could try outlining it in the red just to kind of pull out some more of that red color. And if you don't end up liking the red, you can always go over it with black or keep going over it with white to kind of hide whatever you're not quite satisfied with. Next layer of color with breathe in trust, exhale doubt. I'm going to go ahead and try the red since I've been talking about that. And if you like that, we can keep going with that. And if you don't like that, we can cover it up a bit. Definitely need to make this in show up better because it kind of got hidden in some of that white space right there. Feel free to also kind of use your colors to tell your words. So maybe you put breathe in one color and exhale in a different color. And feel free to play around with those color choices also. And this video will be available on YouTube, probably on Monday. So if you want to go out and grab some more supplies or maybe grab a friend or two and watch the video again and kind of make with me next time, feel free to go to our Michael's YouTube channel and search for this video. And if you don't already subscribe, if you subscribe, they usually alert you when there's new videos available. So if you want to kind of remind yourself to come back, you can. So here's what we have so far for breathe in trust and exhale doubt. And maybe with this one too, I want to add a couple of hearts with my paint pen. This is a real Valentine kind of message. Believe in all the trust around you and breathe that in and get rid of all that negativity and doubt that's not serving you currently. And that's another one of our pieces done. Am I missing anything in chat, Rich, or are we doing okay?
We're doing great.
All right, awesome. Feel free to keep adding things. I'm going to come back to the paper I was prepping before. And remember, I gave myself some space to write on, and this is much drier now that I'll be able to. I'm going to use a paint pen instead of a Sharpie since it's not wet, but it's not dry. So I'm going to use paint instead of Sharpie this time. And on this one, I'm going to tell myself to take up space. Ooh, maybe this way. Take up space. So sometimes, not just women, but everyone are kind of taught a certain way. And you need to break out of that and be reminded that your voice is important, it's necessary, You're allowed to take up space. You deserve respect and appreciation. I'm gonna start making these letters thicker. And I like the way that silver, it's kind of giving me like duct tape feelings, right? Like it kind of looks like putting a couple pieces of duct tape down on paper, which is also kind of appropriate for ripping those pieces of duct tape off and speaking up and taking up space and standing out. Kind of a protest or a reminder how strong you are. And we do have our Michael's Instagram page. We have a specific page for all of our classes that's called Learn with Michaels. And so on Learn with Michaels, you can tag us if you have any of your affirmations that you were able to make. I'd love to see them. So go ahead and tag them. My own personal Instagram is the number 4M Coleman. And you're welcome to kind of tag me and post on my page as well. And I'm going to be posting some of my finished projects. I'm going to keep working on several of the different cards, even if we don't have time in class today together. I'm going to keep working on them and kind of show you a collection of what I've been able to create during this little session right now. So far we have she believed she could, so she did. We have breathe in trust and exhale doubt. And we have our reminder to take up space. So those are the ones I have so far. I feel like there was another one in the chat that I might have missed. If we see that one, or if you think of another one, let me know. And in the meantime, I'm gonna build up another piece. You show the first one. I think you mean this one, Emma. She believed she could, so she did. There you go. And I'm going to go back to this.
The other affirmation was honor what comes.
Oh, yes. I like that. Honor what comes. All right. So for honor what comes, let's see. I don't think I'm feeling that. Maybe. I think I'm leaning towards this one for honor what comes. And I think I'm going to turn it around to have a little bit more of the pink at the top. Honor what comes. All right, let's see what happens. I'm going to kind of do it on the diagonal again. So I'm going to make honor kind of gentle with like a cursive. Honor. I'm going to print the word what. And I'm going to use cursive again. We have honor what comes. And I'll definitely outline this one because I know it's harder to see on this background. So I'll thicken my letters. And then I'll take a little bit of time to outline them as well. So a lot of times in life, something's coming at you. It's not fair. It's not what you want. Got to try and figure out what you need to learn, what you can learn from that situation. Honor what comes out of any of those experiences that might be hard. Honor the things that you're growing with and from. And when it comes to emotions, don't try and push away something just because it's what you might consider a negative emotion like sadness. Honor it. It has its place. It knows what it's doing. Let it be there. I'm going to go back for sure with the white this time. And the white might take a little bit more, another layer or two to really let the white show up. It's doing pretty well. And that's already standing out a lot better. I've also thought about using index cards instead of using cardstock. And then by using index cards, we're going to have the problem that someone was asking about earlier, where the plate is going to be bigger than the cards, but that's okay. It'll just go all the way to the edges of the index card. And then once you have all your index cards, it's kind of nice to have that same size to kind of flip through and make almost like a deck of these kind of affirmation cards. And then another thing I like to do with these is maybe have a stack of them that all say different things and all come from different parts of your life and different things you've been thinking about. And on a day that you might need a little boost of something, go ahead and shuffle through your cards and kind of close your eyes and pick one and see if that message speaks to you that day. I like this a lot. Yes, and a deck of affirmation cards would make an amazing gift. Can you imagine if I received something like that that somebody made for me? I would be so pleased and impressed and cared for. That is a really caring gift. I'm going to do a little bit more white. And you can tell just by adding another layer, it really brightens that up, makes it even more visible than it was. And you can leave some time in between each of your layers to let things dry, and that's going to help you make it even brighter white also. I'm kind of going at a speedy pace since we're doing this live together. So I'm not really waiting for things to dry too much, but it's still looking pretty good. Honor what comes. I know, right? It is like an art therapy session. So I'm going to add a couple of dots down here with my white. Maybe I kind of want to do like a, yeah, like a spiral or two also. Dots up here. Loving it. Honor what comes. I think we have time for one more. So we have, she believes she could, so she did. Breathe in trust, exhale doubt, take up space, and honor what comes. This is a great stack of affirmation cards. And feel free, I'm going to show you real quick with your cards. I like to use a paper cutter, but you can use scissors if you don't have a paper cutter and kind of trim this down to the size that I want it to be. And kind of
Grace,
get, go ahead.
Grace is wondering, can she use a white gel pen instead of the Posca paint?
Absolutely. Absolutely, you can. The gel pen, you might need to do several layers because I think the pen will kind of get soaked into the paint pretty quickly, but you can absolutely use a paint pen. So just by kind of cutting down those borders, you can leave the borders as is, or you can cut them off and kind of cut them down. And like we were talking about, making them all kind of the same shape. Or if you want to, like we were saying before, if I had a solid piece of cardstock of a particular color that kind of pulls out, maybe it's a yellow or maybe it's that pink, and then you could actually kind of frame this really nicely also. So that's another idea for you. And then because this is an art journaling class today, sometimes I also like to kind of collect what I'm working on into a book. So this is a little recollections journal that they have at Michael's. It's really nice because it has craft paper and it has white paper in the pages of the journal. And so you'll see a bunch of different things. I like to do junk journaling also, and I've taught a class about that before, that you can find on our Michael's YouTube channel. But when you're doing junk journaling, sometimes one of the ways I do a junk journal is by using my jelly plates. I think I had one somewhere back here. Here it is. So this is jelly plate, and I just used different colors. I used more of like golds and kind of turquoise together. And this one says, you have so much to be proud of. So if you want to, you can take all these different affirmations and you can go ahead and kind of keep them all in the same book. And I love, again, just flipping through and having all these different positive messages and different things to remind yourself of and things that are going on in your life to kind of flip around through. This one is also using a jelly plate as my background. And then I used a thin Sharpie to kind of go over and just kind of talk through some things, untangle some things that are going on in my life or in my mind. These are some more kind of Poscas on top of jelly plates to do different things. I don't, this is something that happens with a jelly plate. You can use stamps and you can use newspapers, not newspaper, magazines, and you can kind of pick up some of the letters and some of the words that are on something. And then somebody was asking about gel pens. So this one is done using gel pens. And you can tell that they're a little bit more subtle because they are so thin, they kind of get lost. But when you use a lot of the lines together, you can definitely add that in and have some fun with that. This is kind of like another, just a fun book to flip through. Definitely makes me happy. So let's finish off. Oh, thanks. With one more. So I'm going to make this one I am loved because it is Valentine's Day. And um, even if you're going through some different things, maybe you've had a loss of love or a heartbreak or a divorce or different things are happening in your life, always kind of come back and center yourself and remember that you are loved, you are lovable, you are important, all those different things to really kind of remind you. So on this one, I am going to put I am loved and just make that message loud and clear. And I'm deciding if I'm going to do it white and outline with black or do black and outline with white. I think I'm going to do white and outline with black. So my message loud and clear is you are in this one. And go over the white again. And I'll probably go over this a couple more times after class is over because I just want to kind of keep going and make it brighter so that you can see it and read it even better. And then I'll put some pictures of my finished project on my personal Instagram, which is the number 4M Coleman. So you can check out my finished affirmation cards. And if you, again, want to tag us at Learn with Michaels, we would love to see what you're making. So don't forget, you are definitely loved. And I think this brings us to a really good close. So you can go ahead and change over my camera one last time so that I can see all of you and say thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad that you took some time for yourself today. We made some really beautiful messages. She believed she could, so she did. Honor what comes. Take up space. Don't be afraid. Breathe in trust. Exhale doubt. And you are definitely loved. So thank you for coming today. We hope that you come back to more of our Michael's classes and watch this video again on YouTube later. Bye, everyone. Have a great day.